Hello, today I'm going to be teaching you how to play Indian Summer. This is a new game by Uwe Rosenberg, published by Stronghold Games. And this is the second game in the, I don't know what they call it, the puzzle line or something. Basically, Cottage Garden was the first one. This is the second one. And in this game, we're using these polyomino-shaped pieces to cover up our board, and these are all like leaf-shaped leaf artwork on there, which is really pretty. So it sort of makes this nice array of pretty leaves on the forest floor. This game is really good. It goes from 1 to 4 players, so you can play it solo. There are some small rule changes for a 2-player game, but I'll go over that in just a second. In this game, as I said, you are trying to cover up your forest floor with these polyomino-shaped pieces. The first player to completely cover their board and have no empty spots is going to be the winner. The first player to do that is going to end the round, and then if any other players can also complete it, then there's something else that kind of gets done to determine who wins. But basically, it's a race to see who can fill up their forest floor first. So, to start the game, everybody's going to take one of these boards. There are 6 different boards, and they are double-sided, so there's some variety there. You don't really know what you have until you get it. So you get one of these boards. You're going to get a backpack, which is the player aid. And you're going to get 3 of these treasures, which is a nut, a berry, and a mushroom, and there's artwork on both sides, which is really cool. And everyone's going to start with a random selection of tiles, 2 greens, 2 yellows, and 1 red, and they have to be placed in order as 2 greens, 2 yellows, 1 red from your backpack going this way. Then we are going to set up the central area. This is called the common path, the path of pieces around the board. This area is a board that has these animal tiles on there, and I'll explain them in just a second. There are more animal tiles that you see than you see here. They're in this bag. I just didn't feel like setting them all up, but basically all these animal tiles go out over here. These 3 animal tiles are a little bit special. They get bonuses attached to them, but I'll get to those in a second. So we have our common path, and this is our that's our bush, which is where we start, and then the path goes in this direction. So to start the game, the first player is the player who has walked through the woods most recently. And also I should mention that the common path has these pieces. There's also a bunch more of those pieces. There's a few other pieces over here. We have the treasures and we have the squirrels, which I'll get into also in a second. So, on your turn, on every turn, turns go in clockwise order, you have the ability to do 2 things, basically. Your main action, which is to take any one of the tiles that are in front of you and place it on your board. The tiles can rotate, they can flip, they can do whatever they want. So you take any one of those tiles, you put it on your board. That's action number 1. And you can cover up these. You can see these berries, see there's holes in there. This still counts as this being covered, essentially, because obviously the first person to win covers their entire board. So that still is covered. If you do cover up one of these treasures, one of these pre-printed things on here, you're going to take that treasure token from the supply and you just put it over that, like that. So that's the main action you can do, is taking a tile and putting it on there. You could also do a secondary action. If you had treasures, which you do at the beginning of the game, you can take one of the secondary actions. Taking a berry allows you to refill your row, which I'll get to in a second. Taking a nut turning in a nut allows you to take a squirrel, which then you can place anywhere on the board to fill in a space. Taking a mushroom means if you take a mushroom, that's considered an alternative main action. So your main action is placing 1 tile from your row placing a mushroom as an alternative main action. So you play a mushroom, and in a 3 and 4 player game, you take the first tile from 2 different players, and that's the first tile closest to the backpack. So you take the first tile from 2 different players, and then you immediately play them on your board. In a 2-player game, you take the first tile from someone's backpack area, and then also the first tile from the common path that is closest to the bush. That's what the mushroom does. And then the feather, which feathers are a bit rarer. If you turn in a feather, then you can play any 2 tiles you want from your path in any order you want, and that is great because it allows you to take 2 turns basically in a row. You can also, as you can see over here, you can trade in treasures. So basically, if you had 2 berries, you can trade it in for a nut. 2 nuts can trade in for a mushroom. 2 mushrooms can trade in for a feather. Similarly, if you really wanted a mushroom, you could trade in a feather to get a mushroom, or trade in a mushroom to get a nut, or a nut to get a berry. So those are your treasures. I don't know if I mentioned, but the feather is also considered an alternative main action. So these 2, the nut and the berry, you can use those as many times as you want on your turn. If you had 10 nuts, you could turn them all in and get 10 squirrels and fill in all kinds of spots on your board. You can also do that before or after you do your main action. So you could play a nut, and then you can play a feather, and then you can play a berry after that, and then you can play another nut, whatever, doesn't matter. These 2 types of treasures you can use unlimitedly. These 2 you can only use once per turn. So you take a tile, you put it on your board. If the hole in the tile covers up a treasure, you put a treasure on top. You don't collect those treasures until you have filled up the area, which is a 3x4 grid, until you filled up the area that it's in. So if I did that, and then let's say I place this piece here, and then I place this piece here, and then I had put that squirrel over here. So now I've filled up this 3x4. Now I would collect the treasure, and that is mine to use. And again, I could have collected that treasure and then used it that same turn, because I can play these treasures after I've placed my main piece. There's another little thing that happens with these holes, basically. If you ever get to fill in, if you ever have a hole formation that matches these animal tiles, so as you can see, this one right here, if you're in a hole formation that matches the animal tile, then you would get, and I'm just going to make sure I do this correctly because I don't want to screw anybody up. Okay, actually that works out even better. Okay, so let's say this is how it's going on, and then on my turn I place this piece right there. So if the hole formation matches the animal tile, which this one does, once I were to place this, these would all have had berries on them. So, so as soon as I've completed the area, I collect all those berries. And then if it made a formation, then I could place an animal tile over it, and whatever it covers, I would get whatever those treasures are again. So obviously it would make more sense for me to cover it this way, because then I would get 3 more berries, as opposed to 2 more berries if I covered it up this way. Now also this formation actually matches this animal, the fox, and again these 3 animals are a bit special. So if I were to have placed this here, then not only do I get those 3 berries, but then I also get the bonus of the 1 acorn or nut. These 3, there are only a single tile of each of these. These ones, there are multiples of them, so just so you know, these ones are a bit special. That's why they have the bonuses attached to them. So, if you run out of tiles, or if you turn in a berry, so let's just say I ran out of tiles. If I run out of tiles, then I replenish my tiles starting from where the bush is. So I replenish up to 5. I don't adjust the order that I put these things in. So if somebody wanted to mushroom me, they would take whatever's closest to the backpack. And then we move the bush over here. This path will get replenished as soon as there are less than 7 pieces in it. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. No, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So as soon as this piece gets taken, then more tiles are going to come out from the bag randomly, and that'll just go around this path. To start, you put as many tiles around the path with about a hand width distance between there. So yeah, so you have all that set up. So you can only ever have 5 to start, 5 tiles in your common path, basically. If I had, say, 2, or let's just say I had 2 tiles left, I can always turn in a berry at the beginning or in my turn, doesn't matter. I can turn in a berry to refill my path. So that way that would give me more options to work with. If I wanted to, I could always turn in 1 more berry in order to take a 6th tile. I can only do that once, so I can't take like a 7th tile basically, but I could do that. Let's see. So you refill this as soon as you've used your last one. So even with feathers, you cannot use a feather unless you have at least 2 tiles in your path. So you couldn't have used a feather when you only have 1 tile there. Let's see here. Is there anything else? The game is really simple. It's super fun. I should also mention that in this scenario here, like let's say this was the scenario, even though this path right here has the 3 holes in it, which would match something like this, I cannot place an animal tile on top of that unless those are gone. So I wouldn't be able to successfully complete this animal tile unless this area had been completed, because then the treasures would have been removed, and then I would have been able to place that animal tile on top. Let's say I was the first player. If I completed my board, the round is over when everybody else has taken a turn. So essentially everybody gets an equal amount of turns to do this. So I complete my board, and then everyone else is going to take their final turn. And then if somebody else were to have completed a board, then what we do is, even at the end of the round, even if somebody couldn't have completed their board, what we do is we convert all of the treasures that we have into nuts. So essentially a feather would be a nut, and so a feather would turn into a nut, a mushroom would turn into a nut. If I had 2 berries, that would turn into a nut. Let's just grab these real quick. Sorry. If there was any empty spaces, I would turn in those nuts to purchase squirrels, which I would use to fill in any empty spaces that I have, as many empty spaces as I could. If I didn't fill in my entire board, then however many empty spaces I have left, that's my ranking. So that's my score. So if I had 4 empty spaces and somebody else had 6 empty spaces, well, I would beat the person who had 6 empty spaces. But if multiple people complete the board at the same time, you convert all your nuts into squirrels, you fill in all any holes you have, and then if people are still tied and that multiple people have a complete board, then you see who has the most nuts remaining. So berries would be kind of useless in this scenario. So you would just see who has the most nuts, and then that's the tie break. That's the only thing. The treasures are not worth anything at the end of the game, so make sure that you are using them as the game is going on. Don't hoard them. You want to keep using them so that you can kind of complete your stuff faster and faster. That should be everything. I said the game's easy. It's super fun. It's really, really good. And if you have any questions, leave them in the comments. Thanks.